Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are going to try and cut through the noise. And honestly, it is just deafening out there right now. You open your news feed, you check your email, you turn on the TV, and it is just this massive wall of sound about artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. It's the only thing anyone actually wants to talk about right now.
Right. And it's always this very binary conversation, isn't it? Like, it's either this is the magic wand that cures cancer and, writes your screenplay for you, or
Or
it's
it's the Terminator.
exactly, it's the Terminator and we're all going to be turned into paper clips by next Tuesday.
Yeah, the utopia or the apocalypse. There is very little nuance in the middle of those two extremes.
Which is exactly why I wanted to pull this specific document today. So for you listening, it's titled The Double-Edged Sword. And what struck me immediately wasn't the technical jargon, because frankly, there really isn't much of it. It was the tone.
It's very grounded.
Yeah, it's not selling anything, and it's not, building a bunker either. It reads more like a warning label on a power tool.
That is a very apt analogy. The source material here is really trying to pivot the conversation. I mean, we spend so much energy asking, can the machine do X? Can it code? Can it paint? Can it drive a car?
And this source is basically asking, should it?
Right. Or even more specifically, if we do build it, how do we handle it without cutting ourselves? Because as that title suggests, this is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. So we're moving from the how of the engineering to the should of the ethics.
Right, the ethical frontier. So let's get into the first edge of that sword. The source leads at this concept called the mirror of bias. And I have to be honest here, when I first read that header, I rolled my eyes just a little bit.
You've heard it before.
Yeah, I feel like bias in AI is a headline I've seen 1,000 times.
It is a buzzword, yes.
But usually, I struggle with the actual logic of it. Because when I think of AI, I think of math, I think of algorithms, I think of cold, hard data. If I put data into a spreadsheet, the spreadsheet doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't hate anybody. So how can an algorithm be racist or sexist? Isn't math, like, by definition, neutral?
And that right there is the single most common misconception. It's one that this source really tries to dismantle right out of the gate. The math itself might be neutral, but the fuel for the math is absolutely not.
The fuel being the data.
Exactly. The AI learns from human data. It isn't entering a vacuum where everything is perfectly objective. It is entering a library of everything humans have ever written, decided, or done.
So it's basically reading our diary.
It's reading our diary, our court records, our hiring history, our medical files, all of it. And the source argues that the AI acts as a mirror. It just reflects that entire history back to us. And this is the part that I think is critical for us to understand. Today, it doesn't just reflect it, it operationalizes it.
Okay, unpack that for me. Operationalizes it. That sounds a bit like corporate speak.
Yeah, it does a bit. Think of it this way. Humans have biases, sure, but we also have filters. We have civil rights laws. We have human resources departments. We have shame.
Right, we know what we shouldn't say or do.
An algorithm has none of those things. It literally just looks for patterns. And if the pattern in the historical data is inequality, the AI simply identifies that inequality as a rule for success.
Give me a concrete example, because the source lists a few specific sectors where this is hitting hard. They talk about hiring, lending, healthcare, and law enforcement. Let's start with hiring.
Hiring is a classic example of this mirror effect. Imagine you are a major tech company. You want to build an AI to screen resumes because you get thousands of them every single day. So you feed the AI 10 years of resumes from your top performers. You tell the machine, hey, find me more people exactly like this.
That seems logical on the surface. You just want to clone your winners.
It is entirely logical until you actually look at the underlying data. If your top performers for the last 10 years were, say, 90% men, the AI spots a statistical pattern. It infers that being male is a variable that correlates with being a good employee.
So it actually starts penalizing resumes that aren't from men.
Well, it might not be that explicit, right? It's not looking for a gender checkbox. But it might start downgrading resumes that contain the word women's. So things like women's chess club or women's college.
Wow.
Not because the AI hates women, but because historically those specific words didn't appear on the resumes of the winners. It is using those words as a proxy for not a good hire.
That is wild. It's finding a correlation that is technically true in the raw data,
Yeah.
but ethically and legally completely wrong.
Exactly. It's reinforcing the past, and the source points out that this happens in lending too.
Right. Getting a mortgage or a business loan.
Yes. An AI model trying to predict who will default on a loan looks at historical defaults. But historically, marginalized communities were subjected to redlining. They were denied wealth-building opportunities. So they live in certain zip codes, they have different credit profiles.
So the AI just denies them the loan today because of where they live.
Precisely. It uses the zip code as a proxy for financial risk. So a family trying to buy a house today is punished by an algorithm for the discriminatory housing policies of the 1960s.
It's systemic.
Yeah.
It's just baked right into the code. And I know it gets even heavier when the source talks about healthcare. I had to read this part twice. It was talking about predicting sickness based on spending.
Yeah, this is where it gets incredibly dangerous. So hospitals use algorithms to identify which patients need extra care management. Basically, they want to find out who is the sickest so they can allocate resources. But sickness is a really hard thing to measure as a raw number.
Right, you can't just put a number on feeling terrible.
So the developers needed a proxy. They used healthcare costs. The underlying assumption was simple. If you are sick, you spend a lot of money on doctors and hospitals.
Which, again, makes total sense in a vacuum.
But we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a society where, historically, Black populations and lower income populations have had much less access to healthcare.
I see where this is going.
Right. They spend less money even when they are significantly sicker, simply because they aren't getting into the system as often. They can't afford it, or there are no clinics nearby.
So the AI looks to lower spending and just assumes, oh, they must be perfectly healthy.
Bingo. And it recommends less care for them. The algorithm wasn't programmed to be racist. It was programmed to be financially efficient. But because it used a biased proxy, which was money, it literally automated neglect.
Automated neglect. That's a heavy phrase. It really drives home the idea that the machine is just amplifying whatever broken human systems we feed into it. What about the last sector they mentioned? Law enforcement.
Predictive policing. Police departments feed historical arrest records into an AI to predict where crimes will happen next so they can send patrols there.
But arrest records aren't a record of where all crime happens. They're a record of where police were deployed and who they decided to arrest.
Exactly. You're catching on perfectly. If a neighborhood was historically over-policed, it generates more arrest data. The AI sees that data, flags the neighborhood as high risk, and sends more police there tomorrow.
Which leads to more arrests, which feeds back into the AI. It's a feedback loop.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is the mirror. If the image in the mirror is ugly, smashing the mirror doesn't fix your face.
Fair point. So we have this massive internal problem. The bias is hard-coded into the fundamental logic. But then the source pivots to the external problem. What happens when this system starts pumping things out into the world? We're talking about the section on the echo chamber and the erosion of truth.
This is genuinely the section that keeps me up at night.
But playing devil's advocate for a second here. People have been lying since the dawn of time. Propaganda isn't new. Photoshop isn't new. My uncle sharing crazy conspiracy theories on Facebook is definitely not new. Why is AI any different?
Scale and speed. The source makes a really crucial distinction here. In the past, if you wanted to run a sophisticated disinformation campaign, you needed resources, you needed writers, you needed a printing press, or at least a bot farm of actual humans sitting at keyboards typing things out. It was expensive.
There was a friction to lying. You had to work for it.
Precisely. AI completely removes the friction. Now, a single bad actor with a laptop can generate 10,000 unique articles, photorealistic images, and thousands of bot comments in the time it takes us to record this segment. They can flood the zone.
Flood the zone.
It's an information warfare tactic. You don't actually try to convince people of your specific reason of the truth. You just create so much noise, so much conflicting garbage, that people get exhausted and give up on finding the truth at all.
It becomes literally impossible to tell what's real and what's fabricated.
And that leads directly to what the source describes as the erosion of truth. Think about it. If you see a video of a politician saying something heinous, or a CEO admitting to a major crime, your first instinct 5 years ago used to be shock. Now
I just immediately assume it's a deep fake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that creates a societal phenomenon often called the liar's dividend. It gives real bad actors plausible deniability. Even if they actually did do something terrible, they can just shrug and say, oh, that's AI generated, that's a deepfake. And because we as the public know that's technologically possible, we hesitate.
So we stop trusting our own eyes and ears.
We stop trusting a shared reality. And without a shared set of facts, society gets very fragile very quickly. It's like polluting the water supply. Once the entire information ecosystem is toxic, it's almost impossible to filter it back out.
It's interesting you use the pollution analogy. Because usually when we talk about industrial pollution, we immediately talk about regulation. But the source moves right into a section about privacy and the ethics of misuse, and it implies we are currently just operating in the Wild West.
We truly are. The source argues we entirely lack the ethical boundaries to contain this technology right now. And when we talk about privacy in this context, I want to be very clear. We aren't just talking about regular data tracking.
Right, because I think most listeners, and me included, honestly, are kind of numb to that at this point. Oh, Google knows I like sneakers. Amazon knows I need laundry detergent. We've essentially accepted that transaction. What makes the AI threat so different?
It's the shift from tracking to inference.
Explain that difference.
Tracking is knowing where you are physically or what you just bought. Inference is predicting what you are thinking or feeling, often before you even realize it yourself. The source alludes to this terrifying concept of cognitive surveillance.
Cognitive surveillance.
Imagine an AI that doesn't just know you bought sneakers. It knows, based on the specific cadence of your typing on your phone, the slight pause in your scrolling speed, and the microscopic changes in the tone of your voice, that you are entering a manic episode. Or that you are highly vulnerable to a gambling addiction right in this exact moment.
That feels incredibly predatory.
It is predatory. It connects dots that no human observer could ever possibly see. And the source warns that this makes the technology ripe for exploitation. If a company or a political campaign or a government can predict your real-time emotional state, they can manipulate it flawlessly.
So it's not just serving me an ad for shoes, it's actively pushing a psychological button in my brain when I'm most vulnerable.
It is the ultimate loss of privacy. It's not just the privacy of your home anymore. It's the privacy of your internal life, your thoughts. The source frames this explicitly as a fundamental security threat. If we don't put boundaries on how these inferences are used, we are essentially handing over the keys to our own human autonomy.
Okay, so we've got systemic bias, we've got the death of shared truth, and we've got cognitive surveillance. I'm feeling just fantastic about the future so far.
I know, it's incredibly heavy stuff to sit with.
But we have to talk about the one that actually hits people's wallets right now. The source dedicates a very significant chunk of text to the changing nature of work.
We can't avoid the economic impact.
And this is usually where the shouting match happens online. You've got the doomers saying 50% of all jobs will just vanish overnight, and the tech optimists saying we'll all be 1,000% more productive and just work from the beach.
The source tries to walk a very careful line between those two extreme camps. It fully acknowledges the disruption. It says very clearly, labor markets will be reshaped, which is a very polite academic way of saying a lot of jobs will simply go away.
Right. But it brings up an ethical point that I hadn't really crystallized in my head before. It distinguishes between the pursuit of productivity and the necessity of transition.
Yes, this is the crucial pivot in the document. The explicit goal of the technology itself is productivity. That's what it's sold on in the boardrooms, do more with fewer people. But the source argues that the ethical goal of society must be supporting the worker through the transition.
Meaning, it's not about artificially saving the job just for the sake of the job. Like, we don't have elevator operators anymore.
We don't have lamplighters. We don't have people whose job title is computers sitting in rooms doing hand calculations. Jobs change. That is the history of human progress. The stark difference here is the speed at which it's happening.
Because the Industrial Revolution took, what, 100 years to really play out?
Decades and decades at the very least. This shift is happening in real time, month to month. The source argues that the ethical failure wouldn't be inventing the tool. The ethical failure would be letting the tool displace millions of people without providing a societal safety net.
So the double-edged sword here is that we get this massive economic efficiency, but we risk massive human abandonment.
Exactly. If the financial gains from AI just go entirely to the few people who own the server farms and the massive losses fall entirely on the people who used to do the work, that is a fast recipe for social collapse. The responsibility the source is talking about is figuring out how to distribute that benefit so people can actually survive the transition.
It's way less about telling people to just learn to code and more about asking, how do we value human beings in a world where machines are just cheaper at doing the tasks?
That is the fundamental economic question of our time.
Okay. We have painted a pretty stark, intense picture here. And usually, this is the part of the deep dive where I ask, so what on earth do we do about all this? And the source actually provides a framework for that. It calls it the Trinity of Responsibility.
It does. And I really appreciate this because it's highly practical. It moves us away from just wringing our hands in despair. The source suggests that for literally any AI system, whether we are building it, whether a company's buying it, or whether you and I are just using it on our phones, we need to stop and ask three specific questions.
Let's run through them for the listener. What is number one?
Number one, is it fair?
Which loops right back to the mirror of bias we started with.
Right. Who is this system leaving out? Who is this actively penalizing? Have the developers actually audited the training data for those historical prejudices? If a company cannot definitively answer yes to is it fair, they shouldn't be deploying it, period.
Okay. Question number two.
Number two, is it safe?
This covers the surveillance and the data exploitation risks.
Exactly. Where is the user data going? Who ultimately owns it? Can the system be used to manipulate or harm the person using it? Are there hard technical guardrails against someone misusing it to generate deepfakes or misinformation?
And the third question in the Trinity.
Is it ethical?
That feels like a really big bucket.
It is by far the biggest bucket. It asks the macro question, does this tool actually serve humanity? Does it align with our core values?
Yeah.
Because just because we technically can build a bot to impersonate your dead grandmother to try and sell you toaster ovens over the phone, should we?
I really hope that is not a real startup pitch you've heard recently.
Not yet. But honestly, give it a week in Silicon Valley. The point is, asking, is it ethical, forces us to look past the quarterly profits and examine the long-term impact on truth, on the labor market, and on the stability of society itself.
Fair. Safe. Ethical. It sounds incredibly simple when you say it out loud.
Simple to say, exceedingly hard to actually enforce. But the source argues that we, the users, the citizens, have to be the ones to demand it. The free market is not going to do it on its own. The market wants speed and scale. We have to demand the safety and the ethics.
It's about being an active participant in the future. Instead of just standing there and letting this giant wave wash over us, we need to learn how to swim.
Or at the very least, start building a boat together.
Or build a boat. I like that. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We went from the simplistic magic wand idea to the reality of the double-edged sword. We looked deep into the mirror of bias, the toxic echo chamber, the reality of cognitive surveillance, and the reshaping of the job market.
It's a lot for anyone to process in one sitting.
It really is.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up and go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. Something that popped into my head while we were discussing that mirror of bias concept earlier.
Let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time today talking about how AI reflects our human flaws, how it picks up on our historical racism, our sexism, our systemic inequality. And usually the immediate reaction to that is profound anger at the machine. We point at the computer and say, the AI is broken, you need to fix the code.
We blame the messenger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing for you to mull over. If AI is truly just a mirror, is the core problem actually the AI? Or is the AI simply forcing us to finally, undeniably, confront the deep flaws in our own human systems that we have been ignoring and making excuses for centuries?
That is a deeply powerful reframing of the whole issue.
Because maybe the real glitch isn't in the Python code. Maybe the glitch is in us. And for the very first time in human history, we have built a machine that is honest enough and cold enough to show us exactly what we really look like. So the question we're left with is, do we just smash the mirror, or do we finally do the hard work to fix ourselves?
That really is the ultimate question of the AI age.
Something for all of us to think about. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
Stay curious out there.
We will see you next time.